Hey everybody, this is GGB Coast Pepper Steak. We're doing with the Titans Buccaneers game. The Titans Bucks game was rather interesting in my opinion. I'm gonna just start in this winners and losers because everyone knows how this works so far. I'll start with some winners. Most of them, by the way, are going to be on the Titans side of things, and most of the losers are going to be on the Bucks side of things. That's just the way it's working out. The Bucks did kind of get blown out in this game. Not many bright sides if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this game. A lot of bright sides if you're the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans, they have an interesting battle going on for the number 2 QB spot. You got Logan Woodside. He didn't play as much in this game. He only threw 8 times, but he went 7-8 for 64 yards and a touchdown, right? But then you compare that to Matt Barkley, the veteran, out of USC. He went 12-16, 115 yards, 2 touchdowns. So it's like, I don't know who had a better game. Like honestly, this could go up in the air for me. The Titans are a Super Bowl contender, so you want one of them to have a good preseason, and both of them are having very good preseason so far. So I'm actually kind of excited to see if both of them make this roster. I think both of them will make this roster, by the way, because they both look good enough. Who is going to be that number 2 QB? Because right now, for me, it's a battle. Matt Barkley and Logan Woodside have both looked very solid. Another winner, in my opinion, the surprise of the preseason so far, at least for me, is watching this guy, Mekhi Sargent. He's an undrafted back rookie out of Iowa. Out of Iowa. And I honestly had not heard of him. Like, I'd heard of him, like, a little bit, but he wasn't even close to on my radar for running back-wise. And this guy has come in here. And I understand, the Tennessee Titans running back room outside of Derrick Henry has never been insanely good. And Darrynton Evans didn't even play this game. And Darrynton Evans is the guy I think that is, if it's not Mekhi Sargent, it's going to be Darrynton Evans, who's the second best back on this team. Jerry McNichols, my opinion, even though he's been with the Titans for a long time, 5th round pick out of Boise State in 2017 by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jeremy McNichols, in my opinion, has never been all that impressive. He just hasn't to me. He has not impressed me all that much at all. Now, Mekhi Sargent, on the other hand, you look at his stats. He ended up having 16 carries for 78 yards. No touchdowns. But he averaged 4.9 yards per carry. That was the most of the day. Now, to be fair, the only other person that really had a good day running the ball, like a somewhat decent day, was Brian Hill, and he had 10 carries for 24 yards, and he only averaged 2.4 yards per carry. So not a good day by any means by Brian Hill, but it was a decent day. But Mekhi Sargent was absolutely amazing this game, and this is what you want to do if you're an undrafted rookie trying to make the team, is be Mekhi Sargent and prove that you actually have a point on this team. And now, it's not going to be a big deal if Mekhi Sargent, if Derrick Henry's healthy the entire year, because they very rarely use 2 backs. But if they don't, then it looks like a capable running back. If Derrick Henry goes down for a portion of the year. Now I'll go for another winner here, and that's Mason Kinsey. Mason Kinsey is he's had 1 season of experience. He was undrafted out of Barry. So, he was fighting uphill battle to make this roster, but if you don't know, the Tennessee Titans don't have the insanely best roster at wide receiver outside of the top 3. Everyone knows the names: A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, and Josh Reynolds. That pops to mind for everyone's mind. And then you have Des Fitzpatrick, right? And they drafted him, and a lot of people know him if you watch college football. He was a very good receiver at Louisville. But then you got Marcus Johnson. In my opinion, this is the real battle. It's between these 3 players. And then Mason Kinsey's trying to get himself back into that conversation. Now, Mason Kinsey's very far down the depth chart, so I'm not going to mention his name right off the bat, but Marcus Johnson, that receiver out of Texas that's very speedy. Chester Rogers, who I will mention later on in the winners of this game because I do think he's a winner. And Cameron Batson. Cameron Batson was a player on last year's roster, along with Khalif Raymond. They were kind of the same kind of player. He's fighting to make this roster. He's fighting a hard battle. But you look at this, look at Mason Kinsey. He definitely made an impact in this game, having 6 catches for 56 yards and a touchdown. He was only targeted 8 times. He had a good game, in my opinion. He had a very solid game. He proved why he's a special player. He's a special player in my eyes. Is he going to make this roster? I don't know. But at the very least, my opinion, he plays his way onto the practice squad, and maybe another team getting a look at him. I mean, he was a nice player to have on your team. And then another receiver I'm going to mention is Chester Rogers. Chester Rogers is another player I did not know all that much before heading into this game. 5th season in the NFL. He's 27, out of Grand Blanc State. He was obviously undrafted because he's out of Grand Blanc State. And, again, he is kind of in that mix. I don't know if they're going to keep 5 or 6 receivers. If they keep only 5, then definitely it's a harder battle between Marcus Johnson, Chester Rogers, and Cameron Batson. But I don't know. If they end up keeping 6, I feel like Chester Rogers makes this roster. I think he looked good in this game. He had 2 catches for 22 yards. It wasn't all that impressive, but he was getting open. He was making the plays that he needed to make this roster. And he, honestly, in my opinion, was the second most impressive of the receivers on the Tennessee Titans team. And then you look, the only other player that I was really impressed with on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers side, offensively, I'm going to mention one, I think, defensively, was Tanner Hudson. Tanner Hudson, I mentioned last time I watched the Buccaneers play. And honestly, if we're talking about it, Tanner Hudson is a guy that is not going to make this roster. I mean, I feel like in my heart they're not going to keep 4 tight ends. And even if they, I don't see that happening. I feel like most people agree that 4 tight ends is a little bit of overkill. You don't need 4 tight ends. But Tanner Hudson is very much for, like, trying to get on another team. If you don't know who Tanner Hudson is, he was an undrafted player 3 years ago around now. He's 26 years old out of Southern Arkansas. So he's trying to get on another roster. And honestly, you couldn't have done a better job. I mean, you could have done a little bit better job. There was a play where it's either it's either caught and then fumbled, or it was caught and then it wasn't really caught and it was tipped in the air and it was intercepted. But regardless, one of those 2 things happened, and Tanner Hudson, that was a play obviously he would like to have back, because that ended up, I believe, being a pick 6 or a fumble recovery for a 6 or whatever. But he did end up having 6 catches for 74 yards, which is the most by the team by a good 17 yards. So, and he caught 2 more passes than the next closest person. So again, he was impressive in my opinion. And we're going to talk about a winner on the defensive side of things. No one's really stood out for me on the Tennessee Titans side of things, but I'll point out a player I thought looked good, and it was Joe Tryon Shoyinka. Now, that guy's changed his name, but people will remember him as Joe Tryon. He was the last pick of the first round by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, obviously, out of Washington. He ended up having 3 total tackles today, 1 solo tackle, 1 tackle for loss. It wasn't amazing. Oh, wait, actually, I'm looking at the wrong stats. 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, 1 QB hit. So, not stats that'll pop out at you, but if you watch the game again, Joe Tryon was all over the field, and that's kind of what you want from basically a backup linebacker. And linebacker that's going to play some minutes for you this game, for this season. And I'm going to go with a player I've actually been following for a long time as a Penn State fan. It's Sam Ficken. Sam Ficken is a kicker that wasn't all that great in college. Didn't think he would have success in the NFL. He's bounced around from team to team, but he's actually gotten better. And it's only his 3rd season in the NFL, and I've expected it to be, actually it says like 4th season in the NFL. But I thought it was much more. Sam Ficken, as a player that I remember being around for a long time, that's only 4th season for him. He's been on a good amount of teams, but finally he's gotten a home. I think he's finally feeling at home in Tennessee. We kind of saw him get better in New York last year, and I remember because I ended up picking him up in my fantasy league to be my kicker because I really like Penn Staters, and Robbie Gould for me got hurt. That might have been 2 years ago now that I think about it. But Sam Ficken ended up coming onto my team, and he ended up showing out, and I remember keeping him on my team. And now Sam Ficken is in Tennessee. I just love Sam Ficken as a kicker. I think he is extremely solid. Is he the best kicker in the league? No. But I do think he is a solid kicker in this league, and I do think he deserves a starting job. And I'm actually proud to see he's able to scrap himself in a career in the NFL. I think it's very, really impressed by the dude. Ended up kicking a 58-yarder today, so that's why he's on my winner list. Oh, dang, I gotta hurry this up. Losers, let's just go through these quickly. All the Tampa Bay quarterbacks, none of them looked all that great. The best completion percentage was Blaine Griffin, who went 6 of 11, so not an ideal percentage there either. Kyle Trask had a 50% completion percentage, went 13 of 26, threw for 131 yards and 2 picks. Blaine Gabbert went 3 of 6 for 33 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. And Ryan Griffin threw 6 of 11 for 45 yards and no touchdowns, no picks. So again, not great stats from the QBs, and honestly, it's looking like if Tom Brady goes down with an injury, the Buccaneers are screwed at QB. Blaine Gabbert's probably the best one you have, and honestly, didn't want to go there. Keyshawn Vaughn definitely made himself not known. Honestly, his longest run was 5 yards. Keyshawn Vaughn, if he wants to make this roster, this is not how you do it. You don't do it by looking sucky, that's for sure. Keyshawn Vaughn did not have the stats to back it up. He is the 4th best running back on this team. I feel like most reasonable people would agree with that statement. And normally you keep at the very least 3, and you have to make a case for a 4th running back on the roster. Keyshawn Vaughn, to me, right now is not making that case for himself. The other loser I'm going to have tonight is Jeremy McNichols. Jeremy McNichols has been with the Titans for a long time. I think 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 years now. Jeremy McNichols ended up having 5 carries for negative 9 yards today. If you're trying to make your case as why you should be the number 2 back, you are far from making that case. And right now, you are on the fringe of this roster. In my opinion, if you keep Mekhi Sargent and Darrington Heavens above you in the depth chart, Jeremy McNichols. And Jeremy McNichols, in my opinion, he should be gone. I don't see him making this roster. That's really all I can list today. Yeah. Outside of that, I enjoyed watching the Titans beat up on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But here, this is GGB Cold Pepper saying, adios amigos.